It's the general feeling. We feel like, Israel's committing genocide. We feel like Israel is, white oppressors.
We won't discriminate. If anybody wants to work with us and wants to work and support pro-Israel creators, yalla, we're happy to have them on board. Obviously, with some exception.
We complain a lot about, well, influencers this and PR strategy and Hasbara sucks and, whatever it is that we love to complain about as Jews. Welcome back to another episode of the Black and Jewish podcast. My guest today is the CEO of Barzel Media, Brian Spivak. Brian, did I say your last name right?
It's Spivak, but that's all good.
Spivak.
Yeah.
Okay. Brian, thank you so much for being on my show today. I can't wait to talk about all of the great things you're doing with your new media agency. I read that you want to create the economic Iron Dome for Israel and the Jewish people. Can you tell me what you mean by that and what's your vision to create that Iron Dome?
Yeah. Well, first off, Ashira, it's awesome to be on your show. Very, very excited. And yeah, basically what I'm looking to build with Barzel Media, which is the agency that I started, is to ensure that influencers, creators, media professionals, people in the public spotlight, that whenever they are speaking up on behalf of Israel, that they have the economic protection to ensure that they feel comfortable doing so, speaking up on behalf of Israel, because so many people are getting canceled. So many people are losing their brand partnerships. They're losing their revenue streams by speaking up for Israel. And what I noticed in the market, that there was no agency or company or organization that was geared towards ensuring the economic survival of our digital warriors. So that was kind of the mission behind it. And we're doing a lot of things by setting up brand partnerships, fostering connections for these influencers to ensure that they have alternative revenue streams that can allow them to continue their advocacy, or just speaking up for Israel whenever they deem like they want to, right? You don't have to be a time advocate to stand up for Israel. You can be a beauty.
So these are creators who are not just like specific Jewish advocates. These are all types of creators who happen to be Jewish, or maybe even non-Jews who happen to stick up for Israel.
Exactly. We say it's for anyone that's pro-Israel, and it doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter what your religion is, because as we've seen, we have Christians who are standing up for us. We have Jews, of course. We have Muslims also. I just spoke to Luai al-Sharif recently. I mean, these are incredible people that they're risking their career and oftentimes their life. They're putting their life on the line. I spoke to a creator just now. She told me that she's doing this massive event coming up. She doesn't promote it on her Instagram because she doesn't feel comfortable letting other people know, letting her platform and followers know where she's going to be, because she knows that she has certain followers that are potentially harmful.
When you are saying you want to link these creators with partnership deals and, other deals to, ensure their economic success, are these people that you're linking them to, I want to say, the term is not regular, but like regular corporations, meaning it's not just Jewish corporations or Jewish agencies? Is it different corporations that would still like to work with Jewish people?
It's a good question. Basically, the answer is that we'll work with anybody that wants to work with us, or that wants to work with pro-Israel creators. Because basically what happened after October 7th is that these brands and corporations said, no, we don't want to work with you anymore. And so I then specifically went out to find pro-Israel brands. So this could be a Jewish-owned brand, working with a clothing company called Twillery. They're owned by Jews. It's not a Jewish brand, but they're owned by Jews, and they wear their heart on their sleeve. And they want to ensure that there is protection and that there are revenue streams for pro-Israel creators. Now, they're not creating content that is like, rah, rah, yay, Jews, yay, Israel.
Yeah.
But they're working with us because they know that our mission is important. And we're also working with Jewish charities. We're working with companies that are promoting Aliyah. We're working with tons of different opportunities. And honestly, we won't discriminate. If anybody wants to work with us and wants to work and support pro-Israel creators, yalla, we're happy to have them on board. Obviously, with some exception, you know.
What's been the most difficult part about finding these brands to work with? Like, as you're going out and you're marketing your agency, what has been your biggest pushback?
Well, basically, you know, if I was a really poor salesperson, my pitch would be, hey, so do you want to work with all these influencers and creators that nobody else wants to work with? Here they are, right? That would be my terrible sales pitch. So, you know,
Right.
there is that knowledge. But ultimately, it's even the most staunchly pro-Israel business owners and Israeli business owners are really, really hesitant because
Mm.
ultimately they feel like they're putting their business, the economic survival of their company, at risk. And I actually feel very, very differently, but I totally get it. I get why people are hesitant, which is why I really, you know, there's a massive need for educating these brands and making sure that they understand that it's a lot of noise out there, but ultimately the consequences are actually not as
Minimal.
dire and they're minimal. And ultimately, you know, an audience respects a brand that is true to their values and that sticks to their guns, that doesn't cower, you know, in like what is popular in the ether right now. We saw what happened to Bud Light. You know, we're seeing the backlash with Jaguar, and like these companies aren't learning their lesson. They're basically standing up for what seems really popular in the world. If you stick
Mm.
to true values that you really believe in, and that your audience knows that that's authentically your voice, you'll gain more respect and you'll really achieve your marketing and your business goals.
Brian, why do you think brands, corporations, people in general have not caught up to authenticity? Like, they have not seen that this generation is a generation of authenticity. And like you said, we want to see someone who stands by principles and mission and coming out as authentic. And that is what we will then support. Why haven't they caught up? Is it because like leadership is old and they're just not with it? Like, what do you think it is?
Um, it's tough. I mean, I think there's a lot of factors at play here. Number one is the loud, you know, the minority is very, very loud. And so they seem like they're the majority and they seem like they have a lot of influence. But ultimately, what we found is that 80% of Americans actually support Israel. And yet it doesn't feel like that. And yet we're making and basing business decisions on where it feels like it's
Feelings.
opposite. And so we forget about like the real numbers behind it. And ultimately, do you want to be appeasing and appealing to these college campus encampments and protesters? Those are the ones that you want to market to. Like they have no economic buying power whatsoever, except to potentially
Mm.
ask their parents, you know, for, you know, cashew milk and, you know, the latest Xbox. Like it's insane. Um,
Right.
yeah, like I don't know why we're trying to appeal to this very loud minority, but we tend to get caught up in what we see on social media. We tend to get caught up in you know, survival mode. Like that's how we are here in Israel. We feel like we're just trying to survive and let's get past this. And we're already suffering emotionally, and we're very traumatized by what's going on and what has happened. Why risk our business survival? And that's kind of, I think, the questions that we tend to have in our minds. But we've seen some companies really say, no, we don't care. Like this is something that we're happy to go forward with, that we want to do, even if it means, you know, potential risk. And
Brian, what do you think could offset that hesitation? Because, like you said, it's a general feeling that people are catering to, but not the facts. And we also see that is how people approach Israel anyways. It's the general feeling. We feel like, Israel's committing genocide. We
Mhm.
feel like Israel is, white oppressors who, are oppressing brown people and the Palestinians. It's like, but it's not the facts. What do you think from like a marketing standpoint Israel could do and companies could do to just show actual facts and data and maybe make data and facts sexy because data is not always sexy, to see numbers, but what could they
Yeah.
do to offset this catering to people's feeling and what it feels like versus no, this is actual reality. The reality is 80% of Americans support Israel.
So it's a good question, and it's part of like the longer term vision or the midterm vision of what I want to build for Barzel Media, which is basically specific products and services for brands. So right now
Mm,
we're technically representing brands, and we're working with and we're bringing them to influencers. But really, kind of the short term fix that we're trying to work on is to support pro-Israel influencers. Now, the way that I realize that the best way to do that is by representing brands because they need, they need the education, they need all the attention, and I wanted to make sure that we're providing kind of like an unbiased approach to whatever your marketing goals is and whatever type of influencer you want to work with, we'll find you that influencer regardless of who we're representing. So we
mm,
decided not to represent the influencers. Now, the other side of it, and we've built now like a whole community of 160 plus influencers, which you're in as well, Ashira.
yes.
And we have all these products and services, which you've applied to some of these great services as well. But that's everything that we've built on the influencer side. There's a whole market that we want to address as well as part of the grand vision of building an economic iron dome is to build products and services for pro-Israel brands, brands that are either
Mm,
Jewish, Israeli owned, or any allied brand, so that they can feel like they have the confidence and comfortability to show their pro-Israel stance. And actually, I gave a speech on this at a conference called Content Israel, where I spoke about this very topic. But I felt like in a lot of ways I was, preaching to the choir. That's what I thought, but I realized that every single one of those companies in the audience, there were marketing professionals from the audience, they had this hesitation. They're like, I'm an
mm,
Israeli company, and I don't feel like raising my hand and saying, I'm Israeli. And there were a few companies that I called out in a positive way, because I like to highlight the positive things. And I said, look, this company did it well. They're doing amazing. And because they stood their ground, because they stood by their morals and their values. And I think there are many examples like that in the field, but it requires some education and resources.
absolutely. Brian, I want to get to know you, the CEO behind Barzel. So
Mhm.
tell me where you were, October 7th. I know you live in Tel Aviv. How did October 7th impact you? And I seen that you started working with the Hostages Forum afterwards. Just tell me where you were on October 7th and how you launched into working with the forum.
Yeah, so I was in Tel Aviv, got woken up by sirens very early in the morning and didn't really know what was going on. I keep Shabbat, so, just nothing. It's hearing sirens and hearing booms. There's nothing new for me. Ended up like sitting in my courtyard, listening to booms in the distance, reading while waiting to go to Chabad, where I go to pray. And I had a few hours to kill, so I was reading. And then I show up, and then obviously we start to hear more and more terrible news unfolding. And it was just ended up being a really wild day, obviously. But to be surrounded by my community members and my friends, it was the best thing because I felt really bad for people just sitting at home that felt like they were in fear, that they didn't have anyone to really talk to. So we had each other. It was really beautiful. And essentially, like after that, the entire country, as you know, mobilized, where everybody started volunteering in whatever capacity they possibly could. And about 3 weeks into the war, I received a phone call from a friend of mine, I hadn't heard from, and he told me that he started volunteering at the Hostage and Missing Families Forum, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And he's
Yeah.
like, the families are right now from the hostages. I was like, cool. Do they need help? Like, this is my background. I just started working in influencer marketing. I'm by no means an expert, but maybe I can help. He's like, yeah, sure, just show up. So sure enough, I just showed up the next day, and it was actually kind of a funny scene, where like it was chaotic. It was just like a scene out of a movie where the secretaries were just like fielding phone calls, and like people were like just asking the secretaries like, where can I find this? Where's this? And they're like,
Mm.
hi, please hold. Like it was crazy chaos. And I saw Wolf Blitzer in the elevator. I was like, what is going on? Like it was weird. It was like if somebody described a movie. And then it got even weirder, like a movie. And so long story short, I was like, hey, this is my background. This is how I want to help. And they're like, yeah, okay, cool. We'll put you in touch with this person. You have to wait for this person. I'm waiting in the lobby. And then I hear somebody's, say, Brian, is that you? And I see it's my former CMO at a company I used to work at. And I told her what I was doing here. And she's like, cool, come join my team for a little bit. Joined her. And I was like, okay, this is obviously really meaningful work, but I got to figure out how to find my legs here, and how I can really contribute. So, of course, I was going to show up the next day. And so I came back to the office, and I show up, and all of it is gone. There's no secretaries, like all the signs are taken down.
Wow.
Like, what the heck is going? It was like a scene from a movie where you're telling your friend, you're bringing your friend, and you're like, I swear it was all here. And your friends are like, oh,
Wow.
yeah, whatever. And I was like, this is so strange. I'm like, were the hostages released? Like, this is what's going on? And sure enough, I find out that they moved. They moved offices. And like they were only there, I was only there one day in that office. And they
So within a
moved.
day, they just moved and didn't announce to anyone.
Moved. I
Okay.
think they announced it in the WhatsApp group, but I wasn't in the WhatsApp group yet.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I was utterly confused. Anyway, we moved locations, and now unfortunately we've been there since, or the people who are still there have been
Are
there
you still
since.
working with the forum now?
Um, I'm not volunteering there anymore, but they've actually contracted Barzel Media to help out on their Hanukkah campaign. So we actually, every once in a while, they reach out to us and ask us for our agency's help on various campaigns, obviously knowing our background. So both myself and Melissa, who is our community manager, we both had volunteered at the Hostage Forum or worked on the influencer team. So we're very familiar with the operations and how they like to work.
When
Um,
you launched this idea, was it just like you and Melissa working at the forum and then seeing that this is a need? Like, how did you come about for the idea of your agency?
so basically, I started I started and ran the influencer program, and I started to interact with influencers. The main idea was we wanted to get influencers and celebrities to be a positive voice for the hostages and really tell their story, the individuals' stories, not just like the concept of, there's 250 hostages, but real individual stories. And so I started to interact with more and more influencers, and slowly influencers and celebrities started to come to Israel. And I started to really get to know some of them. And there was just a common theme that I kept on hearing, is that influencers were struggling financially. They were losing their brand partnerships, which for many of them is their only or main source of revenue. And
Right.
overnight, these brands said, we're not working with you anymore. You're posting about Israel. You're posting about the hostages. We don't want to work with you. And so immediately I saw, okay, this is a problem. And I said, these are our digital warriors, and they're on the front lines of this digital war, and we're we're not looking out for them. Like there's no protection for them. And so it was just this seed that planted in my head. But obviously, I had this larger mission to work on, which was, representing the hostages, and working with influencers to tell their story. So I put that in the back of my mind. But I was trying to actually figure out how I could launch it inside of the hostage forum. I realized it was way too crazy. So long story short, after about 4 or 5 months of volunteering there, it was the right time for me to take a step back, hand over the reins to somebody who could replace me, and really launch this agency myself. And I basically, the initial concept was these are influencers who, prior to October 7th, had brand partnerships. Those brands said, no, we're not working with you. Great. Are there Jewish owned businesses? Are there Israeli brands? Sure. Great. Let's find those brands to provide this economic revenue stream for them. So that was how it initially started.
Brian, what's your stance when you hear certain people in the influencer world when they say, especially for influencers who only post pro-Israel content, or specifically October 7th content, and they say, "Listen, and they're Jewish. You're Jewish. You should do this for free. This is not something you should make money off of. You should post for free. You should advocate for free. This shouldn't be like a job or something you make money from." What do you say to people who have that stance?
I feel I have very strong opinions on that.
I want to hear
Uh,
them.
yes, yes. So I completely disagree with that, wholeheartedly. Ultimately, we have a choice. We as society and we as the Jewish community have a choice. Do we want somebody in our camp? Do we want somebody not in our camp? Do we want somebody spending their time and their platform and their voice voicing up for us or not? If you want that, great. That person needs to make a living. Or do you say to them, no, sorry, we don't want you to make a living. We want you to be poor, right? So
Mm,
if you want them in your camp, great, cool, that's a yes. Now, do you want them to be poor or do you want them to earn a living? Great, you want them to earn a living. This is how they have to earn a living, right? So they're like, it's just like it's a concept that they just don't understand, which is like they should be doing it for free, Well, okay,
yeah,
but like in what world does that work? Do we want our soldiers to go to Miluim and say, oh, by the way, yeah, the government's not going to take care of you. Your job, you're not going to get paid. And when you come back, you're also not going to have a job waiting for you. We'd be up in arms. Oh, but
right.
no, but it's your mortal duty. No, it's your obligation because you're Israeli. Yeah. Okay. But you have to survive. You have to be able to live. And I always say, I was like, these influencers, especially the ones that were doing something completely different before October 7th, had a choice. And many of them actually said, I cannot survive. I cannot pay my rent anymore. So I'm going to go back to just creating beauty content.
Mm,
The question I ask the audience is, do you want them going back to their regular scheduled programming? If so, sure, they can go ahead and do that. And then we lose another person.
mm.
Or do you want them in our camp? Do you want them to post about Israel every once in a while or all the time? If so, they need to earn a living. Plain
Brian,
and
what's
simple.
your stance about I had another guest on, and they were like, Jewish influencers, it's BS to me. And I said, well, why? He said, because the average Jewish influencer who has 20,000 followers, 30,000, or even 100,000, their following is other Jewish people. So they're not leaving an echo chamber. What do you say to that? Because I don't know the number of Jewish influencers we actually have like in the world, but I'm assuming it's very slim. Like we are not, beating the social media war. So my stance was, no, I think it's good that we have the more the better. But his stance was, why when they're just in the same echo chamber, like the same Jews just follow the same Jews. So what do you think about that?
That is an entirely different question. And
Yeah, like if you think Jewish influencers, I guess my question is if you think Jewish influencing and influencers are effective.
Mhm. So it's a really good question. It's an important topic. And I've actually taken a very serious approach to thinking about that, and actually trying to develop plans and outlets to ensure that we're constantly reaching outside of the echo chamber, and that the messaging is right. So,
Mm.
you know, I don't know if I could say this on the podcast, but
You
I'm
can
just
say
going to
whatever you want to
yeah.
say.
So before the show, we were talking about the fact that you had applied to our Project Greenlight, and I don't even know what you put in that, but basically Project Greenlight gives an opportunity for pro-Israel influencers to submit their dream projects, the things that they've always wanted to work on, but they haven't been able to get funding or financing for, or have the resources for. And we have a Digital Israel fund that we can tap into that can potentially fund these projects. Now, one of the things that I'm building into this structure is that in order for you to get the funding, you have to complete various checks, and you have to get what I'm calling our iron certification.
Okay.
And that is going to be your you'll end up meeting with our research and messaging team, who've done extensive polling on what messaging works and what doesn't work. They've spent millions
Oh,
of
I
dollars
love
on
that.
this research.
Okay.
So you're getting that. So instead of just saying, okay, great, here's $10,000, it's no, here's $10,000, but only once you've gone through the right checks and the right certification to ensure that we're spending this money correctly. But here's the kicker. The second part is that we're going to be running our influencers through like a screening of their followers, like a scraping of their followers, to ensure that, like, to understand how much are we reaching outside of the echo chamber. So what percentage of Ashira's audience is actually unique, that doesn't overlap with all these hundreds of other influencers? So those are things that
Mm.
we're going to be looking at and checking into. And again, maybe the project is actually, the goal of that project is not to reach out outside of the echo chamber. But if it is, we want to make sure that we're actually, if the messaging is that, we want to make sure that the audience matches the messaging, so that we aren't just spitting into the echo chamber.
I love that, Brian. I love that you have concrete solutions to the problems, because I feel like a lot of people, we get around, we talk on shows, podcasts, at Shabbat dinner, and we complain a lot about, well, influencers this and PR strategy and Hasbara sucks and, whatever it is that we love to
Yeah.
complain about as Jews. So I really love to hear that you have like a solid plan, solution based. That is so awesome.
Yeah, anyone who knows me, or actually anyone who's gotten to know me in the last year, I would say that I've definitely taken the approach of, like, less BS, less complaining, and just action. Just, I come up with an idea, or, I meet with somebody and we have an idea. I don't just let that sit. I either say, I don't have the capacity to take this on, or yalla, let's do it. Let's set up a meeting and let's
Yalla.
really get on this. And I really take it seriously. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. Brian, before I let you go, can you tell me what Barzel means and why you
Sure.
named that your media company?
Yeah. So Barzel means iron in Hebrew. And the Iron Dome is called Kipat Barzel, which is like the iron protection, the iron covering. So
Mm.
we have, and I was looking for a name that symbolized strength and protection of the Jewish people, but also a name that I knew English speakers and Americans could pronounce properly.
Yes.
And, and even though before the show you're like, Brian, how's it pronounced? Is it this? You got it right. My last name may be different, but
Yeah.
you got Barzell right.
Come
You
on,
got
your last name
Barzell.
is like Russian, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, for
Yeah,
sure.
see?
Listen, but
I'm still good with my Hebrew, but Russian.
and the Brits pronounce my name funny, so, like, I totally get that. But Barzell, I knew that people were going to pronounce it correctly with certainty, because there is an NHL hockey player, and his last name is Matt Barzell, and the announcers have no issue pronouncing his name.
Baruch Hashem, you chose a
Yeah,
great name.
exactly.
Brian, tell my followers where they can find you, Barzel Media, where they can follow you personally. Give us all of
Yeah.
your social media handles.
All right. You can follow me on all the social media platforms. Actually, no, not all. I'm not on TikTok and I'm not on Twitter. I know. Terrible.
What?
I know. I know. I'll probably get on Twitter just
Get on there.
because.
I had to get on Twitter, and Twitter's hard, but everyone has to be on there now.
Yeah, I have a secret though, and this is I don't know if it's controversial, but it's
Say
just
it.
ironic is that like I don't like being on social media. I hate posting. I love doing these interviews, but I hate posting content and I don't like spending a lot of time on social media. So if I have to add another platform to it, like I can't even get active on LinkedIn, which is so important.
Right.
And so like hiring a social media manager to like ensure that I'm posting more because I don't like actually doing it myself.
Brian, I think we
Ironically,
have the same soul. Before October 7th, I wasn't on social media at all. I only had a LinkedIn. And
yeah.
then I launched, and I was on a show in Israel called The Quad. And Fleur
Ah,
Hassan, the deputy mayor of Jerusalem, she's
of
like,
course.
you have to get on social media. And I was like, why? She was like, you have to, like, for the show and for like advocacy, you have to be on there. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a sad reality, but it's yeah, can't avoid it. So where you can find me is my name is Brian Spivak, Brian Spivak. You type that in anywhere, you'll find me. And it's Barzel Barzel.media on Instagram. Follow us, and if anyone wants to partner with us, any brands, any philanthropists out there that want to support our cause, reach out.
And Brian, before I let you go, can you just give like the influencers a word of encouragement?
Yes. Okay. All right. I think that I think what we're building at Barzel Media is really amazing. I'm super excited because there are too many things that I have in the works that I'm excited about that I know are going to be and are already beneficial to the influencers. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. So I'm excited to have more funding, hopefully, so that I can have more resources to launch more of these products, services, and events for influencers. And the future is strong, and we just got to keep our heads up, stay positive, look out for each other, and we're gonna do awesome things.
Brian, thank you for being on the Black and Jewish podcast. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Ashira.
That's it for this week, you guys. Like, comment, and share this podcast. Let me know what you guys think about influencers and supporting influencers and having more financial backing for influencers. If you're an influencer watching, I want to see you down in the comments. Let me know if you have been affected economically since coming out and supporting Israel. I will see you next week.